Good morning, everybody, and welcome into the Farzy Show here at the Steven Singer Studios. My name's Marc Farzetta, and okay, let's start with the positive. Phillies win. That was cool. Let's see what else we got here. The Flyer season's over, so we don't have to watch the Flyers. That's good. What else we got? Let's see what else is positive here. The Sixers got the number one. Damn, no, they didn't. That was. I don't want to say it was to be expected, but without Joel Embiid and without Matisse Thybulle playing in the game, and they also did, for what it's worth, they didn't have Furkan Korkmaz either. I certainly didn't expect that kind of game from the Sixers, and I think Doc Rivers hit the nail on the head. We're going to hear from Doc Rivers. We're going to hear from Tobias Harris, some of their post-game comments, trying to explain exactly what took place last night with the Sixers losing by 9 points to the Indiana Pacers, a team that's in utter turmoil, ladies and gentlemen. And they just couldn't figure out a way to win that game. And it came down to just, I don't want to speak over anybody's head here, just forgetting how to play basketball in the second half. That's what it looked like to me. They just were brain farting all over the place when it came to what they were trying to do last night in the second half. So we're going to get to that. We will get to the Phillies a little bit more in depth. We will touch on the Flyers and what happened yesterday with their end of the season press conference. Mike Sielski, Inquirer.com. There's a positive. Mike Sielski will be joining us, a friend of mine, and he's making his show debut today. So I look forward to talking to Mike Sielski about everything that took place with the Flyers. He'll break it down for us. And then we'll get Mike's opinion on all the conversation. And we touched on this yesterday. It was most of the show, actually, yesterday. The Eagles and how much they're sold on Jalen Hurts. My whole point yesterday was it's like people are grasping at straws just to hear some idea of Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni, just some idea of whether or not they're going to confirm for us that Jalen Hurts is our starting quarterback, whether or not they're just going to come out and say it, that Jalen Hurts is the starting quarterback of the Philadelphia Eagles. And they haven't done that yet. The closest thing they've got to that, as we pointed out before yesterday, the closest thing they have got to that is that they want to see him take that and run with it. That's nice. That's adorable. But that's not saying that he's your number one guy. That's saying that they want him to be the number one guy. And yeah, I would like him to be the number one guy over Joe Flacco as well. But Mike Sielski will weigh in on that. I'll also weigh in on Nick Sirianni, his first impressions of that. So it's a jam-packed show as per usual for you today here at the Steven Singer Studios. Let's get to this first. So the Sixers have the opportunity to take home the number one seed in the Eastern Conference with a win over the Pacers last night. Sixers have 3 games left in the season. Right now, they're sitting at 47 wins. Nice to get, 50 wins in a shortened season. That'd be great. 3 wins, 3 seasons in a row of 50+? That's great. Even in a shortened season, like I said. But last night, the Sixers come out, and they're pretty much doing exactly what you would want them to do. They come out, they score 33 points in the first quarter. Ben Simmons is attacking the rim. Ben Simmons is shooting jump shots. He shot a fadeaway yesterday. Like, Ben Simmons was playing that aggressive Ben Simmons that we love seeing, right? And at the half, he had 13 points already, which is a lot for Ben Simmons. Tobias Harris had it going for him. You were getting some good minutes off the bench from some guys. Everything looked like it was going to fall into place for the Sixers. And then the third quarter happened. And I don't want to go to that dark place that every once in a while I go to when it comes to the 76, or really any sport in general. But every once in a while I'll go to this dark place. Watching last night's third quarter of the 76ers, it reminded me of the process era Sixers. And I don't mean that to say that this team sucks or anything stupid like that. All I mean is, every once in a while, that process era Sixers team would actually have a really good first half. Somehow, magically, they would have an incredible first half and actually look like a team that would hang with the opposing team that was actually trying to win basketball games as a franchise, as an organization. And then this organization was obviously looking to tank during that whole time. And they'd come out and they'd have a great first quarter and second quarter. You're like, hey, look at these guys. Hey, look at this Royale Ivy knocking down some shots. Look at this Isaiah Cannon knocking down some shots for you. And then the third quarter would happen. And everybody just said, oh, wait, this is the process era? We're supposed to suck at this? Whoops. And then they get blown out 33-10 in a quarter. It wasn't quite that bad. But at one point, I believe the Pacers were winning that third quarter 24-10. So this Sixers team was getting blown up by 14 points at one point in that third quarter, and that ended up being a 24-13 for a third quarter for the Sixers, and they get blown out in that third, and they just forgot everything. We'll hear from Tobias Harris in a second and Doc Rivers and all that, but that's where they lost the game. In the fourth quarter, they showed some fight briefly, but then they ended up just getting blown out of the water again. They get blown up by 9 points, which is obviously what you ended up losing by anyway. But the second half entirely, like I expected that, like when the third quarter was going on, I was like, all right, Pacers are going to go on their run, and then the Sixers will close it out in the fourth quarter. They still have Ben Simmons. They still have Tobias Harris. They're still going to get some good minutes from Dwight Howard, right? You're going to have other guys step up. Isaiah Joe hit a big shot for you in that fourth quarter. Like, It was a situation where you thought they'd be it was a situation where you thought they'd be able to bounce back and close out the game, and they didn't do that. So they don't get the first number one. They don't get the number one spot in the Eastern Conference. After the game, without further ado, Tobias Harris was asked where this Sixers team goes from here.
Just bounce back. I mean, honestly, this is a terrible loss for us as a group. I thought it was a game that we had. But we lost our composure throughout the fourth quarter, which can happen for a team striving to be how good we want to be as a group. We gave too much energy to things that we couldn't really control and things that were over and done with.
We lost our composure. They're too good a team to play like that. It kind of reminded me, they put in too much effort to this point. If you didn't see the rest of Tobias Harris's interview last night, his post-game interview, I can sum it up for you best with this classic clip.
We can't have anyone freak out there, okay? We've got to keep our composure. We've come too far. There's too much to lose. We've got to just keep our composure.
Yeah, that was Tobias Harris post-game, Will Ferrell and Old School. That's what it reminded me of last night. And that's certainly what it felt like, because Doc Rivers said it best also after the game, where he didn't say what I said, which is they just forgot how to play basketball. He just blamed their offense. He said defense wasn't that big of a problem when it came to the offensive output in this game, which made me think of Ben Simmons and the great facilitator he's supposed to be offensively. But in this game in particular, they just did not keep their composure, as Tobias Harris said. And offensively speaking, they had no flow. They had no ball movement. They couldn't put a good series together, a good stretch together. They couldn't put a good run together. And after the game, Doc Rivers had this to say about their offense.
First 5 minutes of the third, we were just horrible offensively. It's rare that I've said this was an offensive loss, but this was an offensive loss tonight for sure. I thought our defense overall held in. Heck, half their points, or 12 or 13 of their points came off of just bad passes and turnovers.
I can't get over it. This team, even without Joel Embiid, this team, 13 points in a quarter against a Pacers team that has just been imploding recently. So hopefully they do bounce back in Miami tomorrow night. They'll get the opportunity to clinch the number one seed, and hopefully that's exactly what they do. And then we can all just, I don't know, maybe guys get rest going into the playoffs. We'll see what happens. By the way, Joel Embiid, we talked about it yesterday. Joel Embiid, illness is why he didn't play last night. And Matisse Thybulle, it was a thigh injury, a hamstring, thigh injury that he couldn't play last night. But nothing seems to be threatening them for the postseason as far as those injuries or illnesses going forward. So we'll keep our fingers crossed for all that. By the way, Tobias Harris just put a cap on that. 27 points for the Sixers last night, team high, which was nice to at least see from Tobias Harris, getting that offensive output without your leading scorer in that basketball game. Tomorrow night, Sixers take on the Heat, and hopefully it's a much better turnout. Let's talk about the more optimistic thing. Those Philadelphia Phillies, they go into Washington. I don't want to overreach here. I don't want to say that they need to sweep the Nationals or anything like that. We're talking about a series this early in the season. But at least take 2 out of 3 against the Nationals after dropping 2 out of 3 to the Braves, especially in the fashion in which you did it. And yesterday, they get Anderson on the bump yesterday. Pitching great, gave up the home run in the 6th inning to Trey Turner. After he gets it at bat with the bases loaded in the top of the inning, Joe Girardi decides to keep him in the game. And thank goodness he did. Because you ended up getting 90-plus pitches from your bullpen between the 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th inning. And Jose Alvarado, in the 8th inning last night, bases loaded situation. Looked like he was forgetting how to throw a baseball. Talking about the Sixers forgetting how to play basketball in the second half. Jose Alvarado looked like he just forgot how to throw a baseball. Everything looked like it was sailing on him yesterday. But let's start at the beginning of this game. Bryce Harper goes back to Washington, and every time this happens, I'm just going to bask in it. And, the Nationals will too, because they won a World Series the year after he left. But Bryce Harper goes up there, gets booed, and I believe it was a 433-foot home run to right center field that he just tattooed to give the Phillies the early 1-0 lead. As far as the Phillies offense went after that, Odubel Herrera seems to be going into, and I've seen this happen from Odubel Herrera before. We've all seen it happen, where he will go into the zone for a week or two. And right now, he is at the tail end of that first week. And Odubel Herrera, the baseball player, is surprising me right now as far as putting it together this early in his return to the big leagues. I would love to see it last. I'd love for him to prove me wrong. And this has nothing to do with off-the-field stuff when it comes to Odubel Herrera. It just has to do with the center fielder of the Philadelphia Phillies. Right now, he is hitting the ball very well. Right now, he's seeing the ball very well at the plate. Right now, he's seeing the ball very well off the bat as well as he's playing center field. Got a great jump on a baseball, hit the dead center yesterday. They had to back up on that. We all just kind of froze for a second, a big exhale, a big sigh of relief, if you will. And that was great to see for Odubel Herrera. Yesterday, has a couple of doubles, scores a couple of runs for you. No better example than Alec Boehm getting the pinch hit appearance in that 7th inning when he steps to the plate and actually drove Odubel Herrera in to score. That was kind of this Phillies offense starting to put things together again, and it started with Alec Boehm. It was capped off by Andrew Knapp getting the pinch hit. GT Real Muto. Hopefully nothing's wrong with him. It should just be a bruise. That's what they're expecting right now. Hopefully nothing that'll make him go on the IL or an IL stint or anything like that. But the offense came up when you needed them to come up big, and they got at least 6. They got the 6 runs for you. The bullpen, as per usual, at least made it interesting late in this ball game, but they were able to smooth it out. And bottom line is they got that save. Hector Neris came in, or not save, but they came in and nullified the threats. Overall, your pitching only allowed 2 runs, so it's not something that you're going to be overly concerned about, at least for this particular game. But like I said, they at least made it interesting. But watching Jose Alvarado, and this is the guy I'm going to focus on, lose the control that he had in the first, let's say, month of the season, you were feeling pretty good about this Phillies bullpen. Recently, it has not just made you nervous, it has made you concerned about the rest of the year. And the last thing anybody wants to see, especially after the way things started out with, you had, 6 wins on the season, and the bullpen had gotten you 4 of those wins in the first 2 weeks of the year. So starting out the year, you actually started to feel like, wow, maybe this bullpen is actually something you can rely on a little bit. Maybe it's not going to be the bullpen of years past where every time you saw a bullpen arm come in, out of the pen and onto the mound, you thought that the wheels were going to come off. Jose Alvarado certainly made me feel that yesterday. Ended up getting out of that bases loaded jam in the 8th inning, which was the overall sigh of relief. But, man, if it's going to be another year of a shaky Phillies bullpen, I got to see Dave Dombrowski go out there at the trade deadline. If the Phillies are anything close to in it to make the playoffs, anything close to in it to win this division, go out there and get some arms that will be able to, I don't know, make you feel comfortable about what's going to happen after your starting pitcher leaves the game. Because I can't continue to see guys like Anderson, even Velasquez, leave these games and the bullpen comes in and everything just falls apart. We have seen that way too many times. And I believe it was a friend of the show, Matt Breen of Inquirer.com, that really pointed this out last year, just how historically bad, like compared to every other baseball team in the last 50 years, how consistently awful, one of the worst bullpens in baseball, the Phillies have appeared in that like bottom 5 tier of worst bullpens in baseball over the last 50 years. Matt Breen pointed that out last year. I don't need to see another one of those. I don't need to see another one of those seasons where the Phillies bullpen is the worst in baseball. Yeah, I don't think any of us do. But yesterday, they came up. They ended up doing their job despite taking, I believe it was 94 pitches to do so. So hopefully the Phillies bats get to go. Alec Boehm, that big hit that I mentioned, Joe Girardi said before the game that he wanted to see Alec Boehm get a little bit of a break, and hopefully he got that bat back to where it was at the very beginning of the season. Also in a spot where he's going to be hitting with runners in scoring position. A good example of that last night for Alec Boehm. And hopefully we're in a spot right now where we can see him start to build off of that, get that batting average up. And Rhys Hoskins is another guy that is just down there in the 220 range again. And they moved him down in the order and all that. And look, I feel like this is the way you got to say this now, because if you don't, you feel like you're out of touch with baseball. But with at least the way the game's going now, I'm all about, yeah, sure, on-base percentage is great. And if you're on base, you're not making outs, and that's fine. But you know what happens when your batting average is up? You're moving runners. You're scoring runners. You're making people round the bases. You're advancing them more so than just maybe one bag. You could be advancing them 2 bags. You could be putting runners on the corners with a single. If you got a guy on first base, you hit a nice single to one of the corners, whatever it might, not one of the corners, one of the one of the gaps, and you could advance the runner to get first and third as opposed to just walking and making it first and second. I'd rather that batting average from Rhys Hoskins, whether it's him being aggressive, whether it's him recognizing pitches earlier, whatever it might be. I'd rather Rhys get that batting average up, because it also means, aside from advancing runners and not just draw walks, it also means the long ball. And when you saw him a couple of weeks ago go through a week of just tearing it up and was leading the league in home runs for a second there, he's been sitting on 8 home runs now for about 2 weeks. And it feels like an eternity now for Rhys Hoskins. That's the guy in the lineup I really want to see make it happen. Of course, Alec Boehm, younger guy, you want to see him get it going. But Rhys, I look at it and I see a guy that's just extremely streaky right now, and you want to see him get that going as soon as humanly possible. Ladies and gentlemen, I was talking about some optimistic things earlier, and last night this really got me thinking. The capacity rules in sports in Philadelphia are going to be lifted. They're going to go to 50%, and then eventually they're going to be lifted. The Eagles are very excited because it looks like, what did we say, June 11th, we're going to be looking at full capacity and all that, and the Eagles are very excited about that. All the teams released major statements about how big this is for them. I can't wait to see Citizens Bank Park and Lincoln Financial Field and Wells Fargo Center. I can't wait to see those full crowds back in the stadiums. That will be, for me as a sports fan, I'm sure you as well, that will be the normalcy that we've been waiting for, getting back to the old normal. And I know there's still going to be rules about masks, throughout the state and in the city, certainly. But hearing a packed house, at first it's going to be a little weird for a second, and then it'll feel like that favorite pair of slippers. It'll feel like that warm blanket. It'll feel like our comfort zone has returned. I can't wait for that to happen. And last night, watching the Phillies play the Nationals, one of my favorite things ever was when the Phillies were making the playoffs every year for that 5-year run, and they won a World Series, lost another, that whole thing, but they're making the playoffs at least. And the Nationals were just terrible. One of my favorite things ever for a stadium takeover was looking out in left field at Nationals Park and seeing that little banner go across from fans that just said Citizens Bank Park South. And I thought that's the greatest thing, because it sounded like a Phillies home game every single time. And I love packing our own stadium, but man, nothing beats taking over somebody else's stadium. And now we're going to have the opportunity to do that again with capacity being lifted. Capacity restrictions being lifted, and I just can't wait to see that happen. The year the Eagles won the Super Bowl, I mean, you had coaches talking about how they were game planning for Eagles fans to be taking over that stadium. I mean, I remember Sean McVay would be talking about it, about how they had to practice silent count for a game at their own stadium. That, to me, I love that stuff. And that will be when it is normal. Last night during the Phillies-Nationals game, you heard Eagles chants in the crowd. It was like, wow. That's really what I'm looking forward to. Aside from the obvious of packing our own stadiums, I can't wait to take over other team stadiums. By the way, speaking of the Eagles, one last thing on the Eagles chant last night. I've said this before. I hate during a Phillies game in South Philly, or even during a Flyers or Sixers game if they're playing terribly. I hate Eagles chants in those moments. But when you're on the road and your team's kicking ass, or even if you're on the road and it's early in a ball game and nothing's really happened yet, I love hearing the Eagles chant in that regard, on the road, where it's like, all right, how many Philly people are here? and who will finish the chant, more or less. That's what I love hearing that. When I hear it when your team's not playing well at home, I just feel, I don't know, it's low-hanging fruit. It's a weird, I know I'm in the minority with that, but that's just how it makes me feel. Eagles schedule will come out today. Look forward to seeing how that plays out. The NFL is doing something interesting. I don't think they did this last year. Good Morning America later today, I believe, they're going to reveal the first Monday night football game of the season on Good Morning America. So you're going to get that captive audience right there talking NFL and Good Morning America. So that's going to happen. Of course, ABC, Good Morning America, ESPN will have the first Monday night game of the year. So at least we'll know the Eagles' opponents in the order in which they will play them, and especially also the Week 17 we know the New York Jets, but we'll know the rest of the Eagles' schedule later today, so I look forward to that coming out. Let me tell you about my friend Steven Singer of Steven Singer Jewelers, ladies and gentlemen. I love talking about my good friend Steven Singer. The competition really hates this guy, though. And why do they hate him? He makes the experience of buying a diamond better and better, and he makes it fun. Steven, very first to offer each and every guest the perfect price. That's right, the perfect price. You ever wondered if you're getting the best price? Are you uncomfortable? Are you uncomfortable negotiating? Well, head to Steven Singer Jewelers, the other corner of 8th and Walnut, right in Philadelphia, and you're guaranteed the perfect price every time. You'll never pay more than the guy sitting next to you. And here's a little insider tip. Most jewelers, they like to mark up the diamond, mark up the jewelry so that you feel like you're getting a deal when you're able to negotiate a little bit, get a couple of $100 off, whatever it might be. Well, not at Steven Singer Jewelers, because every time it's set at the perfect price, never overcharging, never marking up, every time set at the perfect price, so you don't have to worry about your purchase being based on your negotiating skills. All you got to do is worry about buying exactly what you want. 365 days a year, Steven is taking care of his customers with the perfect price. He makes the experience of buying a diamond so easy and so enjoyable. Check out Steven Singer Jewelers at the other corner of 8th and Walnut, right in Philadelphia, or online at IHateStevenSinger.com. Steven Singer Jewelers, one place, one price. That's IHateStevenSinger.com. Coming up, we got our morning rush for you. We have our social media check-in, and we got our big bet segment. Somebody's on a roll again, baby. Not that I like to brag, but somebody's on a roll again. Without further ado, our guest today is a friend of mine for a long time. When I was a student writer at Temple University, writing for the Temple column, I remember talking to this guy many times about just a world of stuff. And then it turns out that our worlds were a lot more connected than even I expected. A lot of the same mutual friends. Without further ado, our guest today, longtime writer, phenomenal writer for the Philadelphia Inquirer, phenomenal columnist for the Philadelphia Inquirer, Inquirer.com, Mike Sielski. So let's talk to Mike about all things Flyers, Eagles, and the Philadelphia sports scene in general. On the Zatos Investments guest line, if I could have fireworks going off right now, ladies and gentlemen, they would be going off for the great Mike Sielski of Inquirer.com. Mike, how are you, man?
I'm doing great, Mark. Thanks for having me on and for the sentiment.
Absolutely. We've known each other a long time. I've wanted to get you on. Timing's been just bad with everybody's busy. I get it. But it's great to finally have you on. We're going to talk some Flyers with you today. We're going to talk some Eagles as well. And you got something really exciting coming out here. And I know his name has been back in the news because LeBron James, because Joel Embiid has mentioned him so much. Kobe Bryant, you're actually writing a book, if you're not finished already with your publication due, but you're actually writing a book on the Mamba himself.
I am. The writing is finished. We're in the editing stage. It comes out in January. It's going to be called The Rise. And the cool part about it is that it's going to deal with Kobe strictly right up until the moment that he enters the NBA. So the elevator pitch I use for the book is the tagline, think of Batman Begins for the Black Mamba. And that's the book. So it's going to be a lot of him at Lower Merion. It's going to be a lot of him as a high school student and a black kid in a suburban Philly high school and how he adjusted and getting ready for the NBA draft and his recruiting and all of that kind of stuff. And I got some cool access to some material that nobody had ever had access to before, and explore some pretty cool angles about Kobe's life.
That sounds fantastic. I've been seeing you update people on Facebook and your Twitter as well to keep everybody abreast as to how the book's coming along. I'm excited to read it. And as you know, I'm not a big book guy. But this is a book I'm going to read. I guarantee you that, man.
Here's the cool part, Mark. I don't care if you read the book. I care if you buy the book. So buy multiple copies, give it to people who may or may not read them. I don't care. Just buy the book. I got mouths to feed.
Understood. I just told a story yesterday of Kenny Mayne. When I met Kenny Mayne, I told him I enjoyed his book. He goes, "Oh, thanks for buying it." I go, "Well, actually, I got it for free. But your book, I will buy. Your book, I will buy."
I appreciate it. And my children appreciate it too.
Absolutely. Mike, we got a lot to get to when it comes to the Flyers. I want to talk to you about the Eagles as well. Flyers had their close of the day press or close of the season press conference, more or less. Yesterday, Chuck Fletcher and Elaine Vigneault addressed this really disappointing season. When you look back on this Flyers, you're just generally speaking, what were your expectations going into it, and what are your takeaways now that it's over?
Well, my expectations were that they were going to be a playoff team, that it wasn't going to be easy, given the way the divisions were aligned. You know, I mean, that the whatever I guess you call it, the Northeast Division or whatever it was stacked. I mean, you know, with the Capitals and the Bruins and the Penguins and the Islanders and all of these teams. But I still expected the Flyers to make the playoffs, so I was disappointed. You know, as kind of an analyst, so to speak, that they didn't make the playoffs. And doubly disappointing was the way that the season just went like that in March, for all the reasons that everybody's kind of harped on, right? I mean, Carter Hart wasn't supposed to be an issue. Carter Hart became maybe the biggest issue. The defense, you know, full of these young players who they had drafted and signed and who were supposed to be maturing, completely fell apart. Kevin Hayes, who was their big free agent signing of the previous offseason and who had been a very solid two-way player for them last season, vanished completely. Now, obviously, the circumstances of this season are different with COVID and, you know, the fact that COVID hit the Flyers as hard as it did. But every NHL team was dealing with that. And I'm of the opinion, Mark, they've got to take a long, hard look at what they've got. And this is a critical offseason in terms of decision-making and saying, are we going to blow this thing up? Are we really going to make major changes here? And by major changes, I don't mean like, you know, are we going to sign another defenseman?
Right.
I mean, like, are we going to leave somebody like a Jake Voracek or a James Van Riemsdyk open to the expansion draft? Are we going to create some salary cap space and try to get creative to really start over in some ways? Because you can look at this season and say it was really disappointing, and it was. You can also look at it and say it's part of a much, much longer, decade-long pattern where they make the playoffs, miss the playoffs, make the playoffs, miss the playoffs, and they're just mediocre the entire time. And you know, nothing's changed about that in a long time. And I wonder what the organization is going to do to look at that and say, how do we change it?
And I'm with you as far as the major changes goes. I'm looking at James Van Riemsdyk. I'm looking at Jake Voracek. I mean, I know Shane Gostisbehere wouldn't necessarily fall under maybe the major change, but he's definitely a name that's been here in Philadelphia for a long time that they already tried to shake up with by placing him on waivers. He clears waivers and he's back with the team. Would you say that the most likely scenario is a guy like Jake Voracek not being here, JVR not being here? What do you think the most likely scenario would be?
If I had to bet just on one of those two guys, because you mentioned them and I mentioned them, being left exposed in the expansion draft, I would say JVR. Voracek's contract might be the most immovable in the entire league. I mean, he's still got 3 years left on it at, you know, well, at over $8 million a year. And I've made this argument, and Flyers fans kill me for it on Twitter, but I'll keep making it. Claude Giroux and Jake Voracek are fine NHL players. Giroux's a much better all-around player. Voracek can be close to a genius offensively, but they are not dominant players. They have not been consistently dominant, carry a team kind of guys over their tenures here. And if you're going to pay that much money to guys like that, they've got to be those kind of players. They've got to be a Crosby or an Ovechkin or a Steven Stamkos, somebody like that. And so that has kind of hampered the Flyers and everything else, right? The other thing is, and I've made this point to my friend Anthony Sanfilippo from Crossing Broad. He and I have kind of gone back and forth about this. But I keep bringing this home. From 2004 to 2012, the Flyers drafted only 3, maybe 4, you could say, impact NHL players who helped them in any way over the subsequent years that they drafted them. Claude Giroux, Shane Gostisbehere, Sean Couturier, and I guess you'd say James Van Riemsdyk, even though they traded him away and then brought him back. Nobody else they got over that 9-year period made any significant contributions to them at all. That's a long time to go where your farm system is completely hollowed out. And it's going to take even longer to replenish it, right? So like when we hear about young players not developing the way that we think they ought to develop, guys like maybe Travis Konechny, Ivan Provorov not taking the step forward that they thought, Travis Sanheim, Phil Myers, guys like that, you have to remember that the Flyers are counting that much more on those guys to take a step forward because they're still refilling their farm system. Now, maybe you're going to see that change a little bit. Maybe a guy like a Wade Allison or a Joel Farabee, as you accumulate these prospects and draft picks and they make their way up, will fill in some of the gaps. But that hasn't happened really to the extent yet. And you can't expect it to happen because they went so long with everything being barren.
Mm-hmm. One of the guys, or actually two of the guys you touched on earlier, some of the younger guys that you thought would take a step forward this year, Travis Konechny, Nolan Patrick. I didn't expect a lot from him, but at least you were going to have him back this year from the concussions that he was going through. And then obviously Carter Hart and net. Why the, if not regression, at least leveling out of that talent? Why didn't you see those guys, you think, take a step forward this year?
Well, I mean, who knows? I mean, Hart did not play well really from the jump. And he was so good the previous season, especially in the playoffs. And the thing about it is that there's nothing in his past that would suggest he would regress like this. Like, he had the most accomplished young goalie resume you could ask for. Tons of international play, high level success, gold medals in international play for Canada and World Juniors and all that stuff. So for him to take a step backward and to be as kind of lost as he was really puzzling. I have to think circumstance has something to do with that. The Flyers certainly have to hope that, because if Carter Hart isn't what they thought Carter Hart was going to be, they're in big trouble. As far as Patrick, you have the head injuries, you have post-concussion migraines and things like that. Now the hope is you get a full off season. Alain Vigneault, Chuck Fletcher talking about this today. You get a full off season. Patrick says he's very healthy. He's back to full health. He'll finally step forward. But the fact is that this guy was the number 2 overall pick in the draft. And you can't whiff on a pick like that. If you're going to do what the Flyers did, and you're not going to completely go in the tank, if you're going to try to make the playoffs and be kind of bad and rebuild, but not really be bad enough to tank, if you get the number 2 overall pick, you got to hit on that pick. And it has not been a hit so far. Now, part of that isn't Patrick's fault, but the facts are what the facts are. So there's a lot of up in the air kind of situations here for a lot of guys on this team. And, Fletcher and Vigneault have their work cut out for them in terms of determining what the problems were, how to get them fixed, and whether they can even be fixed in the first place.
Last thing for you on the Flyers, what job do you think Alain Vigneault did this year? How good a job, how bad a job with this roster?
Wasn't great. Circumstances, again, were against him. He's part of the reason the team was better last season. I think it might sound like an excuse, but it's true. Practice time makes a difference. But I was also surprised, and to be frank, a little dismayed by Dave Scott, the Comcast chairman, the Flyers chairman, coming out in an interview with my colleague Sam Carchidi and really kind of putting the onus on Vigneault for the poor season. Like, these players have to be coached up. And this is the same thing I've been hearing. If I'm a Flyers fan or a Flyers follower, I've been hearing this since Peter Laviolette was the head coach, since Craig Berube was the head coach, since Dave Haxtell was the head coach, since Scott Gordon was the head coach. At some point, it has to stop being about the head coach. I know in the NHL, head coaches are as disposable as tissues, but it's him. And if he's saying the same things that a guy with no NHL coaching experience like Dave Haxtell said, a guy who would won a Stanley Cup like Peter Laviolette said, a guy who went on to win a Stanley Cup like Craig Berube said, again, maybe the problem goes deeper than the head coach.
I think that's an excellent point, Mike. I absolutely agree with that. Switch gears a little bit now. I want to move on to the Eagles. I have this theory, and I know there's a lot of people talking about Jalen Hurts and just how sold the Eagles are on him. If I had to describe it in a way, and you can tell me if you agree or disagree, I think Jalen Hurts right now for the Eagles is Mr. Right now as opposed to Mr. Right, to use that analogy. How do you think the Eagles look at Jalen Hurts?
I think that's a very apt way to put it. I think I wrote this last week. I think this is a prove-it year for Jalen Hurts. Does that mean he has to be Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers level? No, but he has to show them that he is a capable quarterback in the NFL, the kind of guy a team can win with. And part of the reason they need to find that out is twofold. Number one, they could have as many as 3 first-round picks next year. So if Jalen Hurts doesn't work out this season, if he turns the ball over too much, or is too inaccurate, or can't grasp Nick Sirianni's offense, or whatever the case may be, they're going to have an opportunity to draft a quarterback next year. And we know how much they value that position. Number two, Jalen Hurts is still in his rookie contract. And I've come around to the idea of arguing that the smart teams in the NFL, if they haven't already figured it out, are going to figure out that the way to win in this league, unless you get a quarterback who's of Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady level, and there are only so many of them out there, the way to win is to find a capable young quarterback, to draft one or sign one, get him on a cheap rookie contract, and take that money that you have under the salary cap and build the rest of the team around him with veteran players with more talent. You know who did that and won a championship? The Philadelphia Eagles in 2017 and 2018. Of the last 6 times that they've made the playoffs, that Super Bowl season, they spent less under the salary cap on the quarterback position than in any of their other 6 seasons. They had Carson Wentz in his second year, and they had Nick Foles in the first, less expensive year of his contract. And what did that allow them to do? Go sign Torrey Smith, sign Alshon Jeffrey, sign Chris Long, trade for Timmy Jernigan, sign LeGarrette Blount, go out and get guys who were ready to win. And what happened? They won. So, yeah, I agree with you. I think Hurts is not a lock. They might like him. They might like his potential, but they want to see what he can do before they commit to him long term.
2 more things on the Eagles. When it comes to not necessarily trusting Jalen Hurts, but more so trusting some of this speculation that's out there, and it's really all it is right now is speculation, but how much substance is there between putting the Eagles in the same sentence as Aaron Rodgers, or putting the Eagles in the same sentence as Deshaun Watson?
Oh, I think Howie Roseman would jump at an opportunity for that. It would not surprise me if they did that. Now, I think it would be very risky. I really do. I think you're seeing this new era of quarterbacks, guys like Rodgers and Wentz and Watson and Russell Wilson. They know how much power they have, and they have, in many respects, more power than the team. So you have to be careful now that if you go after a guy like that, he wants to be there, and he's going to want to be there for the long term. The Eagles thought they had that with Carson Wentz, and it turned out they didn't. The Seattle Seahawks thought they had it with Russell Wilson, and Russell Wilson made all kinds of noise about, I don't know, the Houston Texans put aside the off the field allegations against Deshaun Watson. The Texans signed him to a gargantuan contract, and it took him less than a year before he said, "The hell with you guys." So, and we know what's happening with Rodgers. So, I would just caution the Eagles that if you're going to deal for a guy like that, you better be sure he's going to be here a while.
And absolutely, that's what I'd have to see Aaron Rodgers be the Tom Brady type guy, 43, 44, 45 years old, playing football still. I'm asking everybody this that comes in any contact with the Eagles, does any writing on the Eagles whatsoever. I'm asking everybody this question, and I love the responses I'm getting. Hey, what do you think of Nick Sirianni?
I love it. I love it.
Okay. All right.
I'm so happy. You know what? I can honestly say this. One of the things I'm most looking forward to as things continue to open up, right, in our society, fans coming back to stadiums, just being able to hang out and all that. My hope is that these leagues recognize how essential the symbiotic relationship between the media and the athletes and the coaches are, that, we help. It's not our primary job, but we help publicize them. We tell stories about the people involved, and that gets people interested. I want to do a sit down with Nick Sirianni. I can't wait to do that. I think he is really interesting. I am refreshed by what he says in these press conferences. You can see that he wants to speak. He wants to be helpful. He wants to be revealing. I think that's awesome. I had no issue with the rock, paper, scissors thing at all. None. I'm so in on, I want to see how this guy does, and keep being refreshing in your press conferences. Keep wanting to tell us things, and let's see how you do as a coach. He may founder, he may be terrible, but you know what? He'll be interesting, and that's cool by me.
I got to tell you, I said after the first press conference, it might be an easy target. It might be low-hanging fruit, right, to look at a guy like that and have fun with it. I'm not going to make fun of him, but I am going to have fun with it. And as far as the rock, paper, scissors goes, do we not have to be creative in this Zoom world that we live in now to try to test players in any way that we possibly can?
These guys, I mean, look, I wrote this the other day. Like, Peyton Manning or Ryan Leaf was a real discussion in 1998.
Right.
Okay. Like, scouts thought that Andre Wadsworth, who was this defensive end out of Florida State years ago, was going to be the next Bruce Smith. These teams miss on draft picks all the time. And if whatever method you're going to use to try to find a little something out about these kids, go do it. I'm all for it.
All right. Mike Sielski, Inquirer.com. Make sure you read his stuff all the time, Inquirer.com, and in the Inquirer, obviously, as well. And then check out the book when it does come out. Any ballpark, The Rise, all about Kobe Bryant before he goes into the NBA draft. Any idea when it could come out?
The publication date will be January 11th. So like I said, it's in the editing stages right now, picking out photos, making sure all the typos are fixed. And I'm looking forward to it. I put a lot of work into it, and I'm really excited about it.
All right, so there will be photos, because I don't read books without pictures.
There will be photos, Mark. Again, just buy the book.
And I've been hearing about this podcast that's going to be attached to it in a way.
Yeah, there's going to be I'm going to start working on it this summer. It's going to be called Young Mamba, and it's going to be a 10-part podcast, I think coming out in December. Again, another kind of look at Kobe's early life, but from a slightly kind of different, more personal angle.
I look forward to checking it out. We'll certainly have you on again to talk about it even more. Mike Sielski, Inquirer.com, joining us here on the Zatos Investments guest line. Mike, thank you so much.
It was my pleasure, Mark. Good to see you again.
Good to see you too, friend. Perfect. Thanks, brother.
All right.
Always a pleasure talking to the great Mike Sielski, Inquirer.com, and I was following the chat. Oh, boy, you guys. Comments. Mike's one of the nicest human beings on the planet. And again, I know him personally, so when I see people get so fired up over what he says, I just go, I don't know why it makes me giggle, but it does. We'll get to all your comments coming up in a second here. But first I want to tell you about DraftKings. We're going to get even more on DraftKings in a second when I tell you about some big bets for tonight and my big bet for last night. But some big names are heading into this weekend's UFC 262 card. Nate Diaz, for instance, Michael Chandler as well. There's no shortage of big names when it comes to all that's going on with UFC 262. And DraftKings Sportsbook, the official betting partner and sportsbook of UFC, has a heavyweight offer in this weekend's fight with 100-1 odds. Love these types of bets from DraftKings, and they happen all the time. One fighter will be walking away with the belt, and you could be walking away with a lot more cash in your pocket. Just pick the main event fighter you think will win, and DraftKings Sportsbook will give you 100-1 odds on that fighter. That's right, $1 bet on select fighters, and you'll win $100. No better way to put your MMA knowledge to the test than to put your money where your mouth is with DraftKings Sportsbook, America's top-rated sportsbook app. Don't worry if MMA isn't for you. DraftKings also has great odds and promotions on basketball, on hockey as well, and baseball. DraftKings safe, secure, reliable, so you can deposit and withdraw your funds at your convenience. Download the top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app now, or go to use promo code Knuckles. That's promo code Knuckles when you sign up to turn $1 into $100 when you bet the main card fighter to win. Place your bet and watch the fists fly this weekend. Once again, promo code Knuckles to turn $1 into $100 on the main fight card for the fighters going on in UFC 262. For a limited time only at DraftKings Sportsbook, must be 21 or older, Pennsylvania only, new customers only. Restrictions apply in partnership with Meadows Racetrack and Casino. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. I tell you all the time about our friends at Zatos Investments. Get in on their action as well in the Philadelphia real estate game with Zatos Investments, an up-and-coming luxury real estate development company in the Philadelphia area. They design and develop top-of-the-line custom homes all around the city, ranging from small single-family rehabs and ground-up new construction townhomes and condo buildings. Zatos also works closely with their private investor base to provide them with substantial returns on their investment, ranging from 20 to 40%. These guys crushing in the Philadelphia real estate game. So to see their properties and also learn how you too could invest with Zatos Investments, reach out to them at info@zatosinvestments.com or simply visit zatosinvestments.com. How about another great business that I love supporting and love being partners with here, and that's Steak and Maine. Fine dining in the heart of Northeast Maryland. Whether you dine in a more upscale steakhouse or casual bar and patio, you'll enjoy the highest quality prime meats, fresh seafood, world-class oyster bar, and freshly prepared sushi. All that, an extensive wine list, including their own Cavada Cellars wines, open every day for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Steak and Maine in the heart of Northeast Maryland, voted #1 place for steaks in America by the Travel Channel and Cooking Channel. Check it out for yourself. Go to steakandmaine.com for more info. Two things I want to touch on real quick. or one thing from the top of the show that I want to be able to revisit here. I know a lot of people are upset about what happened to the Sixers last night. We're going to talk about how they could still win the first spot in the number one spot in the Eastern Conference in just a second, because they could do that. And we'll talk about that coming up in our morning rush. But one more time, I want you to hear from Tobias Harris last night after the game about where this Sixers team goes from here. Take a listen to this.
Just bounce back. I mean, honestly, this is a terrible loss for us as a group. I thought it was a game that we had, but we lost our composure throughout the fourth quarter, which can happen for a team striving to be how good we want to be as a group. We gave too much energy to things that we couldn't really control and things that were over and done with.
So we'll see how they bounce back tomorrow night. But again, we'll get to that light at the end of the tunnel today. There's a light at the end of the tunnel for the Sixers, so we'll get back to that in just a second. Now I want to give you our social media check-in, brought to you by the great people of Steak and Maine and steakandmaine.com. I see the comments just flying today. God bless all y'all. Ask Mike about Voracek. I knew people were going to ask about that. I'll say this. Mike always writes how he feels. I never feel like I'm getting a hot take from Mike Sielski, and I know a lot of people also look at Marcus Hayes as a hot take guy. Like, these guys, they're knowledgeable sports writers, and they write what they feel. They write how they feel. So I never feel like I'm being BS'd with either of those guys. But the Voracek thing at the beginning of the season, when Jake Voracek called him a bleeping weasel, I believe it was. Yeah, I felt it wasn't necessary to put more emphasis on something that happened, 4 months ago, 5 months ago, whatever it was. And plus, where do you go from there? That's from Tim asking about Voracek. JD's checking in saying, I need a smoking hot weather girl involved. Okay. No, any? JD's also saying in the show far. No, I get it. Thank you. I wasn't assuming it in my personal life. I just need someone to give me weather updates. When I have that right here on my Apple Watch. What else do we have? Tim just saying, Farzy, what's up, brother? Nick Anderson checking in saying, goat time. My man. Mally, what's happening every morning? What's up, Mally? You're the man. Jacob, Dave need to do work. We have another Dave in here? I don't know. Max checking in. Love the chant in the comment section. I do love the Eagles chant in the comment section. Was saying earlier that every once in a while I do enjoy the chant, the Eagles chant, while the Philadelphia teams are on the road, whether that be the Phillies, Sixers, who fly, whoever it might be. Yeah, that's where I enjoy it. In the South Philly, when it's not an Eagles game, that's a little weird to me. But yeah, definitely on the road and in the chat. I love that as well. Mac, damn, I got flagged. Why'd you get flagged? What the hell happened there? What else do we have? Jacob's checking in, laughing his ass off at Mac. Jeff really wanted me to ask about Jake Voracek and Mike Sielski. No, didn't get there. What else do we have here? Oh, the division is named the Metro Division, East Metropolitan Division of the Northeast. Dan Schwartz, nice job. Yeah, hockey made it confusing this year. Don't like the Flyers takes, honestly. That's Craig on Mike Sielski. Mac is also agreeing with that. Benny getting heated here. If G is being paid outside the top 30, I don't mind his play. He's been a reliable force. I agree with you on that. But Benny also not a big fan of some of the takes that it comes to with Mike Sielski. Dumb to place it on a contract when it comes to Jake Voracek and when it comes to Claude Giroux, because they have nothing around him. Here's the thing. Both those guys are supposed to help each other out. And I am not at all on the Claude Giroux hate train that some people like to get on. I think Claude has been your most consistent player from start to finish of this year. I also think that, a young up-and-comer, Joel Farrellby, Jake Voracek. I mean, here's the thing. When I get upset with the Flyers and I look for guys to be stepping up, Jake Voracek is a guy that should be stepping up. And I'm not saying he needs to be a 30, 40 goal scorer or anything ridiculous like that. I just feel like sometimes he's invisible on the ice. And I don't get the sense that it's the same type of thing that I would get from Claude Giroux. Like there's times where Giroux won't be showing up on the stat sheet, but you still do see him doing little things on the ice to either create turnovers or create scoring chances for the Flyers. And I don't really see that from Jake Voracek, and that is a mega huge Kajunga contract. And the one thing I will say I disagree with Mike on is I think the Flyers want to move on from Jake Voracek. I don't think they necessarily want to move on from JVR. So I think they're going to move on from. I think Voracek has played his last game with the Flyers, and I know I said that yesterday, and I said that with the Nasty Knuckles boys a couple of days ago during our post game or postseason wrap up, really. But I think if it comes down to anybody off this team that will be a little bit of a surprise, and the guy you're just used to seeing on the Flyers now, I think Jake Voracek is the guy that will be off that list. Benny's also checking in. Targeted angle specifically, I'm not sure what the reference is. And I know a lot of you guys got involved in the conversation regarding Jalen Hurts. Yeah, neither Mike or I feel like this is really the Eagles concentrating on Jalen Hurts to be their starting quarterback no matter what. I think it's still very much open to interpretation when it comes to Aaron Rodgers and when it comes to Deshaun Watson. I just feel like I think the Eagles are going to be kicking the tires on all those situations. So thanks, everybody. Oh, Benny. What's up, buddy? You're back and you're cooling off. It's good to have you back. Adam's checking and saying we should have Gio on the show. We had Giovanni on the show. Great guy. Love Giovanni. Does a great job with his podcast as well. Thanks for everyone that checked in on our social media check-in brought to you by Steak and Maine and steakandmaine.com. Now let's move into our Morning Rush segment. A couple of things we want to concentrate on here. Really two things. One comes to the Sixers and one comes to the Phillies. The MLB trade rumor is upon us. And yesterday, maybe 2 days ago, you saw some conversations start up about the Cubs willing to part with Chris Bryant. And it's really gone on now. It's almost become that thing with Chris Bryant where it feels like, oh, it's that time of year where we talk about the Cubs trading Chris Bryant. It feels like the last 2 or 3 years that's been a topic of conversation. Well, yesterday, Chris Bryant gets pulled from the lineup in the 6th inning randomly because he was under the weather. That's what the Cubs said. I would love to see Chris Bryant with the Philadelphia Phillies. Talk about a guy that can hit for average, a guy that can hit for power, a guy that gets on base, and supposedly a guy that's willing to play all over the diamond right now. So you love that willingness to at least be play a different defensive position. I do think it's going to take a king's ransom to get him here to Philadelphia. You're talking about a guy that's already an MVP. You're talking about a guy that is just so vastly different than anybody you have in the lineup right now, being that he hits for power, average, and he gets on base. That's something that I'd love to see the Phillies get. And he's 29 years old. Yes, there's the X factor. Yes, there's the other factor, I should say, that he's like besties with Bryce Harper since they were like 2 years old. Another Vegas guy. Teammates when they were kids. Their dad, Bryce Harper's dad, would throw him batting practice, right? Yeah, that's all great. So what are you willing to give up? 29 years old. Alec Boehm, his name obviously gets thrown in here. Talk about minor league prospects. Is Bryson Stott going to be traded in this? Spencer Howard going to be traded in this? And overall, I think there's 2 problems that the Phillies have right now. Their bullpen. You need somebody more reliable, more consistent to come in and be a good bullpen arm for you. And then the other is a consistent bat. And the Phillies don't have that right now either. JT Realmuto's been fairly consistent for you, but not at the level that a guy like Chris Bryant can be. You're talking about bringing in a guy here that has MVP potential. And I think the Phillies, when it comes to names that we have come to really like in Philadelphia, I think we really liked Rhys Hoskins, but I feel like his name gets brought up a lot nowadays when it comes to really just talking about an inconsistency at the plate. But I think the name that you're really going to have to part with, I think 2 names you're going to have to part with. One is Alec Boehm. The other is Bryson Stott. And he's right now one of your top prospects in your minor league system. I think those 2 guys are names that are going to be out there when talking about bringing Chris Bryant to the Philadelphia Phillies. So if you're willing to part with those 2 names to bring in Chris Bryant, then, yeah, all systems go. I think the Phillies right now, when I look at this rotation, I look at the money being spent, I think if you're looking to move on from any of your younger guys to bring in a win now type of guy, the Phillies would certainly be in on the Chris Bryant sweepstakes. And I would be willing to give up Bryson Stott. I'd be willing to give up Alec Boehm. As much as I like those guys and wouldn't want to see it, you can bring Chris Bryant into Philadelphia to play the hot corner for you right now and bring a 300 batting average, bring a 390 on base percentage, bring a guy with 9 home runs so far this season. By the way, he had a down year last year, only played 34 games, down year last year, but really has been a very consistent player every single year for the Cubs. And if he's willing to play somewhere else and somehow, some way, you don't have to trade Alec Boehm or Alec Boehm plays somewhere else, then yeah, I'd love to see him. Another young name that the Cubs will probably at least have interest in, and it's a very small sample size for him, Nick Maton, who I know the Phillies really like to have in their lineup. But if you can make that happen and Chris Bryant becomes a Philadelphia Philly, and again, it just seems like this time of year where that name just becomes available again, and it feels like for the last 3 years, Chris Bryant has certainly been in that conversation, not necessarily to the Phillies, but at least to the Cubs wanting to move on from him to see what he could bring back. Yeah, let's party, man. I'm all systems go to bring in Chris Bryant. I loved his game for a long time, and if you could bring him here to Philadelphia, yeah, I am ready to go for that. Yes, I would have Boehm on the table. Yes, I would have Bryson Stott on the table. 29 years old, hot corner for the Phils. Yeah, I'm ready to see that. So that's where I weigh in on the rumor going around right now about Chris Bryant. As far as some other things I want to get to in our morning rush segment. So here's the light at the end of the tunnel. That's why I replayed for you Tobias Harris from the top of the show. The Nets won yesterday. So the magic number for the Sixers still is at 1. But the Nets winning yesterday made that happen. The Nets are right back at it tonight. Sixers off tonight. They play Miami tomorrow night. Nets tonight play the Spurs at 8 o'clock in Brooklyn. And they lose that game. Sixers, Eastern Conference number 1 seed heading into the playoffs. So I'll keep my fingers crossed for that to happen. That's the light at the end of the tunnel for the Sixers, and it could all come together tonight. Big bets. Oh, I'm sorry. That was our morning rush brought to you by Sky Motor Cars and SkyMotorCars.com. Big bets segment. Your boy's on a roll. As I lose my pen cap. Last night I told you that the Heat, I like them going into the game at minus. I believe I got them at minus 1.5. Got them early in the going. I believe right before tip off it went to minus 2.5 for the Heat. The Heat, it was a close game in the first half. Second half, they took over the game. And then they allowed the Celtics to kind of peek their head back into the ball game a little bit later. But the Heat won that game. They won my bet for me, so I won a couple of bucks on that game. No game really jumps out to me tonight. Nets, I believe, are a minus 4.5 going up against the Spurs tonight. Hopefully you see the Nets lose, of course. I'd still rather the Sixers win and have them, take the Eastern Conference number 1 spot with a win. But if I had to make a bet tonight, the Blazers versus the Jazz in Utah tonight, Portland is going off at a plus 3.5. I kind of like Portland in that game. Jazz, not so much, but I like Portland in that game. Plus 3.5. That's the game. If I had to bet tonight, I'm not. But if I had to bet tonight, that's the game I like the most that's on the schedule tonight on DraftKings and DraftKings Sportsbook, America's top-rated sportsbook app. If you're betting, make sure you're betting with DraftKings. Thanks for watching the show today. Thanks for listening. Make sure you subscribe on our YouTube channel as well. Tomorrow, we'll be talking hopefully about about at least the Sixers taking that top seed, even though they're idle tonight. And maybe we're talking about the rest of the schedule, them resting some guys against the Heat and the other 2 games they have to wrap up the season against the Orlando Magic. That's ultimately, I guess, the goal, right? To still get the number 1 seed, no matter how you get it, and be able to rest guys going into the playoffs. So you have guys like Joel Embiid and Matisse Thybulle and even Furkan Korkmaz and Tobias Harris, who's not injured. But you have those guys ready to go come the postseason and operating at max capacity. So that's what I look forward to seeing. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening, everybody. Always a pleasure. Thanks to Jim Hyden, who produced the program. This is a Buzz Sports and Entertainment production. My name is Marc Farzy. We'll be back with you guys tomorrow here at the Steven Singer Studios on The Farzy Show. Have a great day, everybody. Take it easy.